Was it a three Bob night? Or perhaps people just wanted to play the drinking game Hi Bob. But whatever the case, we had a little bit of a Bobsuation, a BobGate, a discombobulation here in Washington State. The filings for office ended on the 10th. And two people named Bob Ferguson signed up to run for governor. The only thing was, the Attorney General, also named Bob Ferguson, was also running for governor. And Bob, the Attorney General, didn't like that two other people with the same name were also going to be on the ballot. So it created a bit of a sticky Bob situation. Let's discuss. So this is the Washington State Attorney General, Bob Ferguson. His legal voting name is actually Robert W. Ferguson, but he goes by Bob Ferguson. I call him Sideshow Bob. Anyone that knows the politics up here in Washington State knows that he's cost our state millions of dollars with unsuccessful lawsuits against companies like Value Village. Simply put, he's a moron. And he uses the power of his office to punish political opponents. However, because our state is one-party rule, he will likely get elected as governor. But that still didn't stop him from having a hissy fit and throwing his weight around when two other people named Bob Ferguson decided to enter the governor's race. Because this Bob, he thinks that he should be the only Bob on the ballot. And he used a law from the 1940s to try to intimidate the two other Bobs into dropping out of the race. Yes, because he thinks that he should be the only Bob around. So this was the law in question. It says a person is guilty of a Class B felony punishable according to Chapter 9A.20 RCW who files a declaration of candidacy for any public office of 1, a non-existent or fictitious person. Let's talk about that right now. Bob Fergusons that filed in addition to Attorney General Ferguson were fictitious or non-existent people. One was a military vet from Graham, Washington, and the other was a retired state worker from Yakima. So, no violation there. The name of any person, not his or her true name. Bob Ferguson is all three of their real names. So, again, no law broken. A name similar to that of an incumbent seeking re-election to the same office with intent to confuse and mislead the electors by taking advantage of the public reputation of the incumbent. Well, the Attorney General is not the incumbent to the governor's seat. He hasn't ran before. It's his first time filing to run, so he's not the incumbent, so no law broken there. Or 4, a surname similar to one who has already filed for the same office and whose political reputation is widely known with intent to confuse and mislead the electors by capitalizing on the public reputation of the candidate who had previously filed. For one, we don't know the order that they filed. One of the other Bob Fergusons could have filed before the AG Bob Ferguson, but also there's no proof that anybody misled or confused anyone because the ballots haven't even gone out yet. And even when the ballots go out, there's a voter's pamphlet. And the voter's pamphlet will have the photos and the education and the biography of everybody running. So if you're really confusing the Attorney General with a retired military person from Graham or a retired state worker from Yakima, you have issues. There's no proof of misleading or confusing voters. And then at no point did they capitalize on his reputation. So, no law broken. None of those 4 sections show that those guys broke any law. But that didn't stop Bob Ferguson from going after them. No, first he got the former governor Christine Gregoire to issue a statement, which is really rich considering that Christine Gregoire was part of the 2004 cheating scandal that saw Dino Rossi actually winning our gubernatorial election, but Gregoire being named the winner after a best 2 out of 3 count. Yeah. So she's not one to talk. So Gregoire said there's only one Bob Ferguson who is qualified to be governor, one who has a long and distinguished career standing up for Washingtonians. There's no doubt this last-minute filing by two unknown Bob Fergusons is an effort to deliberately confuse Washington voters. It's nothing less than an attack on our democracy. Washington voters are smart, and we will see through this highly deceiving and potentially illegal effort to mislead them. Really? Really, Chris? Really? Yeah. Okay. You're one to talk about attack on democracy. And then Bob decided that he was going to hold a press conference. And he had his little lapdog, Dave Satterfield, open the presser.
In fact, they have to do that by the end of the day. But you can go on the Secretary of State website, couple clicks, and you're done, and this is over. But if it's not over, if they don't do that, we're calling on the law enforcement. Probably Thurston County is where the jurisdiction is, where the Secretary of State is, and where the filings happen, to investigate this and look at this law. We're calling on the prosecutor in Thurston County to also investigate and look at this law, and because we can't let this go. We can't normalize this. We can't just have a good laugh at this and say this is okay, because it's not. It's a vandalism to the ballot. It's a crime against the state of Washington, the integrity of the election. It's a theft of the real Bob Ferguson's reputation and name.
And you know what Sideshow Bob did? He sent cease and desist letters to the two other Bob Fergusons, telling them that they needed to drop out by 5 p.m. on Monday, or he was going to have Thurston County investigate them and prosecute them. Yeah, let's listen to Sideshow Bob throw his weight around, misuse his power.
This is so beyond the pale, so unacceptable. Such a violation of election integrity.
If they do not do the right thing, and they are surely aware of the legal implications, we will have no choice but to take more serious steps and ask local prosecutors to do the right thing and pursue further action.
So here's the information about the cease and desist letters. The Bob Ferguson from Graham acknowledged to Como News that he had received the letter and would drop out because he doesn't have the resources to fight a well-funded legal challenge from the Ferguson of Seattle. Because we coincidentally share the same name, that you know that it is a felony for two people. I guess what the intent being is that they think that my purpose was to deceive the people about who was who, which was not my intent at all, said the Bob Ferguson from Graham. I'm just a little man and do not have the means to combat this. That's why I signed the paperwork last night, and it's submitted today to withdraw from the race. And not long after it, he put out this statement. And I'll let you pause and read. But basically, he talks about how he was faced with harassment and legal action if he did not withdraw from the race. He was publicly labeled a threat to democracy by another candidate and his supporters. And then not long after Bob Ferguson from Graham, Washington dropped out, then Bob Ferguson from Yakima also dropped out. And of course, Sideshow Bob celebrated. He put out this saying, "We defeated their dirty tricks. Both fraudulent candidates withdrew. You won't have to worry about which Bob Ferguson to vote for. This blatant attack on election integrity failed and democracy wins. Meanwhile, they showed us their true values and contempt for voters. Anti-choice Republican Dave Reichert will answer for his record, and Washingtonians will decide in November." But it's really funny that Bob keeps going after Dave Reichert also, because the state GOP gave the endorsement to Semi Bird, not Dave Reichert, and Bob really doesn't know who he's going to face in the general election because we haven't had the top two primary yet. But that didn't stop him at the press conference from attacking Dave Reichert yet again.
I hope Dave Reichert can find it within himself to have the most basic level of decency and fair play. I mean, I understand we have our political differences, but I thought at a certain level, he was a certain kind of man. I really did believe that about him. But he has revealed himself to be something very different, and it is sad. I'm looking forward to debating Dave Reichert. He'll be hearing about this.
I will say I was very disappointed by Dave Reichert because he did come out and denounce the two other Bob Fergusons, which I thought that was just ridiculous. He should have denounced Attorney General Bob Ferguson for misusing his power to intimidate two other people to drop out of the race. But the other leading GOP candidate, Semi Bird, did speak out about what Bob Ferguson did. So this is what Semi Bird came out and said. He said, I find Bob Ferguson's whining about the two Bobs to be completely disingenuous when he has presided over the consistent decline of our public safety system and has personally gone out of his way to infringe upon the constitutional rights of Washington state citizens on a myriad of topics. Bob Ferguson is directly responsible for undermining democracy in Washington state and will be held accountable via the vote of the citizens who are fed up with career politicians and seek positive change and common sense governance. And in full disclosure, because you can also look it up through FOIA requests, I did file complaints with both the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office, even though I know he's not going to investigate himself, for Bob Ferguson misusing his power to intimidate two candidates from dropping off the ballot. I feel that it's election interference, and I also cited this Washington code. So I cited 9A.80.010, official misconduct, under number 1. A public service is guilty of official misconduct if, with intent to obtain a benefit or to deprive another person of a lawful right or privilege, he or she intentionally commits an unauthorized act under the color of law. He deprived two other people of their lawful rights and privileges of running for governor in the state of Washington. They were both 18 years of age and both legal citizens, meaning they had every right to run just like he did. The Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, is a tyrant. And also, the other thing he tried was the ballot order is all done by a draw. So it's like a lottery. So the names of everybody that runs for governor are drawn out and they're put on the ballot in that order. Attorney General Bob was going to be number 13 on the ballot. He went to the Secretary of State and tried to convince them to violate the law and put his name first. So this guy doesn't care about democracy. It's so funny that he keeps saying that Republicans are always trying to subvert democracy, because he truly is the one that is trying to in this gubernatorial election in Washington. So yeah, Sideshow Bob, you need to go.